Hello, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new series. Yes, that's right, we are doing a new mini-series basically looking at the beers that inspired me to get into beer, I guess. Those origin stories, so Crummy's origin beers or something of that nature will probably be in the title of this video below. First up, I would like to just apologise for the occasional firework noises you're probably going to get picked up on the microphone because, well, it's near bonfire night and that's what happens. So what I am going to be doing through this series is going through and taking a look at the beers that are still available today that formed, I guess, my early opinions of what made a good beer and just, well, to help you understand the beers that, I guess, adapted my palate for what it is that I enjoy today, and answering the very important question of, are those beers still any good? Which, for this one, there will be a big question mark over. But I had to start with this one, this Hobgoblin from Wychwood Brewery, because simply, well, it's probably the most important of all of the beers that we're going to cover in this series in terms of what it means to me and what it did for me when I was younger. So, let's get into it. So what we're going to do now, of course, is review the beer and see, well, how much I think it's changed and if I still think it is any good. Before we crack into it then, here is a quick look at the bottle as always. I'm going to say, unfortunately, the label has changed in recent years. It's not as good as it used to be, but it is still pretty cool artwork nonetheless. There is, as you'd expect with a lot of these beers, quite a lot of info on the back because they are now effectively owned by global businesses. And as this beer is so important, I do actually have a beer appropriate glass. This is more in tune with the older kind of style from Wychwood, but I've had it a few years and nonetheless it is the right glassware. My bottle opener for this day, I don't normally cover, to be honest, but I am going to on this one. This is from HOBGOBLIN. They're a mountain bike parts manufacturer, but they also make this cool CNC billeted bottle opener. It's quite heavy, but the fact that they're called Hope is appropriate because I kind of hope this is still at least a little bit good. In the glass then, this has often been categorised as a ruby red ale, not a dark ale. However, while this does look quite dark on camera, if I hold this up to the light, it is distinctly bright ruby red where the light bleeds through. It is a proper deep red ale, this. It looks very appealing. As I say, it's got good clarity, nice ruby colour to it. The head's okay. I suspect it won't hang around too long, but it doesn't look bad at all. Right then. Let's do the aromas. I mean, I'm smiling because it just reminds me so much of, well, my younger days, I guess. I mean, it's got a nice, obvious hop and bitter balance on the nose. Bit of caramel, bit of berry. And to be honest, that hop profile that is there is very much reminiscent of old, classic British ale, which I know a lot of people seem to have abandoned in favour of fruit-infused things, but I have a real soft spot for it, so I am quite looking forward to this. Let's get into it. Cheers. Honestly, I've actually not drank a beer like that for a long time now. I've clearly been getting too obsessed with, well, newfangled ways and means. I'm not saying they're not better, but that does have a rich, wholesome, robust ale quality to it that, to be honest, I think I'm missing in my life right now. So what are the flavours? Well, it's quite a prickly beer, decent amount of carbonation, a few jarring hits of bitterness throughout, and again, there's a very, very small amount of sweet caramel. There's just kind of a residual vibe. There's a bit of that red berry flavour, and there's just a kind of quintessential heritage hop aftertaste that, well, you would expect out of a beer that's been around as long as this has. Right then, very quick top to bottom taste test and then we'll have a look at the bottle and find out a bit more about how this beer has changed. So initially, slightly bitter, kind of mid carbonation on the front of the tongue. As it gets mid palate, to be honest, the carbonation spikes. It is quite carbonated for this beer style, but it works very well with this beer in particular. It is quite refreshing in the mid phase, and you start to get hints of a bit of caramel, a bit of berry, but they're quite subdued, they're quite low-key, as, to be honest, a lot of beers are of this ilk. On the swallow though, big splash, bit more fruitiness, a whole host of bitterness. The bitterness though is short-lived, it's not cloying, it's not too impactful after the first couple of mouthfuls. It's, I guess, very retaining of what a lot of people would call true ale, old school ale. It's got that vibe, but it's not too fuggy. It's quite fresh. There is a lot of character to this, that which is a bit of a bad pun because Wychwood was always said, I think their catchline was brewed by character or something like that. But you know what I mean? It's got the character traits of trad ale, but there's something about this that just sets it apart. It's a bit brighter, it's a bit fruitier, and to be honest, I do very often find it hard not to order one of these if I see it in a pub. However, these days that is not very often, so it's been quite a while since I've had one. There is a little bit of that green, slightly fuggy trad hop profile on the aftertaste, but it's very mellow, and to be honest, I kind of understand why now I liked this, and to be honest, still quite like it a lot. It's not the best beer in almost any metric, but it does something just a little bit different, and for that, it is still a thumbs up. Right, let's take a look at that bottle. On the front then it says Hobgoblin Ruby 5.2% beer. It is worth pointing out though that the ABV of this beer changes depending on the platform, so whether it's on hand pull, in bottle, so on. I will let you know what that difference is very soon. And it just says Wychwood Brewery, who unfortunately, as we'll now find out on the back, if we look at who it's brewed by, it's produced by Carlsberg Marston's Brewing Co. They got bought out quite a few years ago now, unfortunately, but to be fair to them, for a long time, and it still may be the case, that this was still brewed in the same brewery. And little fun fact for you, that was the first brewery tour I ever did, was around the Wychwood Brewery. I believe they had been bought out by Marston's at the time I went round, but it had only been a few months, so it was still relatively as it had ever been. On the back though, it does say again, Hobgoblin Ruby Beer. It says, think legendary. This distinct ruby beer, sweet caramel and fruity aromas tease the taste buds, brewed with smooth, rich chocolate and crystal malts with a blend of Fuggles and Styrian Goldings hops. I mean, Fuggles and Styrian Goldings, as tried as you can get pretty much. It says, expect a delicious full-bodied toffee flavour and a fruity finish of figs, raisins and dates. Drink legendary. It's not quite as intense as, what did they say, full-bodied toffee and maybe figs and raisins and dates. It's not quite that rich, but it's true, there is a caramelly sweetness and a deeper, darker red berry kind of a sensation, all of which kind of matches that. I think they're bigging it up just a little bit though. This is a 500ml bottle. There is 2.6 units in this bottle. Of course, there's a load more info on there. And this is a very fresh bottle because the best before is the 30th of September next year. So yeah, this has only been hanging about, I'd say, for a couple of weeks, maybe 4. So interesting. So what I don't normally do in beer reviews is take a look at the history of a beer, because to be honest, most people just want to know if it's any good. I think most of you will already know whether you like this or not, but I want to find out just a little bit more. So things we already know, Wychwood Brewery is a brewery in Witney, Oxfordshire, which again, as I said, I have been to. It's owned by Marston's, and the company's flagship brand is Hobgoblin, a 5.2% brown ale. Exhibit A. They've called it brown ale, ruby, red ale, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, fine. It produces around 50,000 barrels, which is 8,200,000 litres of cask ale each year, and is the United Kingdom's largest brewer of organic ales. Wychwood filtered and bottled beers are exported all over the world, including North America, Germany, Sweden, France, Australia, Russia, Japan, Israel and Singapore. The largest producer of organic ales. That is a pub quiz winning answer somewhere, I'm sure. The brewery is known for its character-based label artwork inspired by the myths and legends surrounding the ancient Wychwood Forest, of course, which is where the brewery takes its name. And of course, Wychwood Forest is indeed in Oxfordshire, as is the brewery. But now we get to the bit that you really want to know about. So here's the bit you're really interested in. It's 5.2% ABV in bottles. as per this one. It's 4.5% in cans, so not sure why, but that is the case. It's 4.5% on cask. However, it was previously 5.6% on cask, which was when it was, to be fair, pretty good. And originally, and I have had it at this, I did have a sneaking suspicion this used to be a lot more potent than it was in bottles on cask, and I was right. It used to be a whopping 6.5% on cask. I really need them to do that again, because that stuff really was legendary. And as a nice little bonus round in the guise of pub quiz, let me know in the comments below what you think the most sold British bottled ale is. Because it's not this, because this is in second place. Let me know below. So then, that kind of wraps up everything we needed to know about this beer. I still think it's pretty good, I think. Yeah, I do. It has its issues, of course it does. It doesn't feel particularly modern, but it just has that bit of extra sparkle, that bit of extra fire that a lot of trad beers are definitely missing, which makes this still definitely a standout component. It's still alright. I would prefer it to see in its previous kind of higher ABV guises, but maybe they just wouldn't sell as well. I don't know. And we learned a bit about the history as well. This is undoubtedly the most important beer in my history of beer, because this really was the trigger for me to go, that dark stuff is pretty interesting. And that led to the channel you see before you. So, cheers Wychwood HOBGOBLIN. I'm glad to say it's not a complete disappointment. And that is all I have to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.